Well, the New York Mets did it. They have traded Justin Verlander back to the Houston Astros. What did they get in return? I'll discuss that on today's breaking news edition, Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Well, the Mets did it. They traded Justin Verlander, and they sent him back to the Houston Astros for two outfield prospects, one being Drew Gilbert, the number one prospect in the Astros system, the other being Ryan Clifford, the number 4 prospect in the Astros system. I'll get into the return a little bit. I want to talk more about what happened here, how everything unfolded, and what the Mets decided to do. It feels very much like Justin Verlander said, I'm going to waive my no trade clause for the Houston Astros, steer the ship in that direction, and the Mets had to get the best return possible, and they did have the leverage of, we'll just hold on to Justin Verlander, although shopping him as aggressively as they did would have made that very awkward. So it felt like a deal was imminent, and I thought that there was a chance that this could play into some leverage where the Mets could get in on a deal with the Orioles and pick from their incredibly deep farm system, get a big package, eat a lot of money to a team that needs that, right? And really get the haul of all hauls. And then it'd be up to Verlander to decide if he would, exercise the no trade clause and stay with the Mets or not. And I thought that was a win-win scenario. But maybe the Mets felt like they had to make a deal and they had to make sure that they sent Verlander to a place he wanted to go, which if you're dead set on trading him, you have to do. And it just keeps on circulating and coming back to the Astros, the Astros, the Astros. And for Verlander, that makes all of the sense in the world. Here's a guy that now has a chance to go back and defend a World Series title that he helped win, okay? He gets to go back to a team that he spent all those years with. Was it 2017 was the first year he went there, wins a couple World Series, and won a lot of games in Houston. That's important to Justin Verlander. He won 61 games in 5 years. If he has, at this point, 2 more years after this left, and he's trying to get to 400, and that's 2 more years on this contract, he wants to get as close to, did I say 400 or 300? I am just going 100 miles a minute because I've been waiting all day for something to happen, and now we're talking about a deal, okay? So I'm trying to get my head around it. But again, Verlander wants to get to 300 wins. He wants to win a World Series. Houston checks all those boxes. He has a great relationship with the owner, Jim Crane. Jim Crane probably pushed pretty hard for this. We'll find out the financial details. But the Mets decided to make this move. And as a fan, I completely understand being frustrated right now and being upset and thinking about your season. I talked to my dad this morning, and he, as a fan who loves to watch the Mets every night, was not excited about this possibility. He still holds out hope, like I'm sure some fans do, that, hey, maybe the Mets could go on a little bit of a run tour towards a wild card, at least be somewhat competitive in September. And taking Verlander out of that is no fun, and it sucks that he's not on the team in 2024. And you can make the case if you're trying to win a World Series in 2024, this was not the move to make. But I would also say you have to acknowledge who Steve Cohen is and what the Mets have been at this deadline. Steve Cohen, with his hedge fund, it's all about reading the market. And this has been as clear of a seller's market as you can find. I was speaking about that a month ago. I wrote an article about it for Just Baseball, how, which team will take advantage of a seller's market. And the Mets have been one of the teams to take advantage. And in this deal, you get 2 more top prospects that will slide into your top 10. So count them out. Your Mets' new top 10. You got Marco Vargas in the David Robertson trade. You got Luis Angel Acuna in the Scherzer trade. And now you get 2 more added into the mix with Gilbert and Clifford. 4 guys slotting into your top 10. Now, a lot of position players, fans will say, why didn't they get any pitchers? Well, you can only get what's being offered to you, and the Astros didn't really have any pitchers to trade. But you get two of their best prospects in this deal. I'm not saying this was exactly the trade I was hoping for. I saw the Dodgers with Emmett Sheehan. I thought, get me that arm that can slide into the rotation. That'd be awesome. I saw the Orioles with Heston Kjerstad, and I thought maybe there's a chance the Mets can get an incredible outfield prospect who's close in this trade. They can get more on top of it because maybe they can really leverage the Orioles with their money. But ultimately, you have to send Verlander where he wants to go with that no trade clause, and that's what they did here. And I do think that the return is fair enough that this was the right move for the Mets based on what they've been doing. I want to get to that in a minute. Before we do, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever been in the situation where you want to go to the game, but finding tickets is so stressful that you ultimately decide not to go? Game Time is a fast and easy way to get tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. We can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun you're going to have at the game. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always find the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seats before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps, you're all set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. And you can snag tickets without the stress by using Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, so let's talk about the return. The New York Mets get Drew Gilbert, who represented the Astros in the Futures game this year. First round pick last year in 2022. He was the 28th overall pick. He was also drafted with the 35th overall pick out of high school in 2019. An outfielder who is considered a gamer by scouts and people who watch him play. He was unbelievable in his last season in Tennessee. He hit 362, 455 on base, 673 slug, 11 home runs, 21 doubles, and 4 triples in 58 games. OPS well over 1,000. Dominated in a very small stint in rookie ball last year. Played a little bit of low A. This year was his first full season. He started in high A, hit 361, 421 on base, 686 slug in 21 games. Showed that he was well advanced past that level. Ends up in double A where he's played 60 games. That's hit 241, 342 on base, 371 slug. Guy that could be a center fielder for the Mets. Maybe he's in a corner, but someone that will slot very highly in the Mets system. I'd imagine top 5 prospect without a doubt here. So really nice addition and probably top 3. I imagine it's some combination, depending on where you look after this deadline, of Kevin Parada, Luis Angel Acuna, and Drew Gilbert. The Mets have gotten so much deeper in their farm, and that could work twofold. It could be guys that are part of this team, or if this rebuild, repurpose, retool, whatever you want to call it, is short, and the Mets have a window to win next year, these are guys you can flip at the deadline next year when you have more of a chance. So getting talent is never a bad thing, and it's hard to say that full control over Gilbert and Ryan Clifford is not going to ultimately prove to be more fruitful to the New York Mets than Justin Verlander at age 41 and age 42. Now, Verlander can still be great, but the Mets decided to get out of the old days business, and how they pivot, how they rebuild the rotation next year is to be seen, but that's clearly the path they chose to take. And if that's the path you have chosen to take, and if you've gotten that far down the road with Justin Verlander, maybe it would have been too awkward to just say no. And so here you go. You get a couple of prospects that slide into your top 10, and we'll see how they pan out. And I know there's going to be a lot of fans who aren't happy with this, but it's the deal that the Mets chose to make, and you kind of had to live with it. Clifford has some good stats as well. Here's a guy that was drafted in the 11th round last year, but has really shot up rankings with a good season this year in low A at 19. And by the way, this guy was drafted out of high school, I should add. He is only 20 years old, just turned 20 July 20th. So very young prospect who's already up in high A. Low A, he hit 337, 488 on base, 457 slug. And up in high A, He's hitting 271, 356 on base, 547 slug, 16 home runs. So Ryan Clifford's a guy that, maybe in the long run has higher upside than Gilbert. You're taking a chance here. And I think with the trades they made throughout this deadline, you feel a lot better about the Mets' chances to have a young, cost-controlled core. Now, that makes you worry about 2024 and if the Mets are going to win that year. And I don't know what the plan's going to be. I can't tell you what they're going to do in the offseason. But what they have done is they've taken a farm system that just graduated a lot of guys and was going to be probably closer to a bottom barrel farm system again. And they've really enhanced it quickly. And we'll see what other moves they make because Tommy Pham still needs to be dealt. As I've been recording this, maybe that's happened. Omar Narvaez could be dealt. Jose Quintana is getting a lot of interest on a market that is really valuing starting pitching. Maybe they get some more there. It has turned into a fire sale. Billy Epler was not true to his word on that point because they're clearly selling everything that's not bolted down outside of probably Pete Alonso. I would, at this point, the Pete trade's not going to happen. But will Brooks Raley go? Will, again, Pham, Quintana, Narvaez, Ottavino, anyone is in play, and the Mets could be very active down the stretch here. They get this deal done, which was probably taking up a lot of their time, and now it moves them on to try to get the most value of everything else they have. And on tomorrow's show, which I will record after this deadline, we'll see where all the chips have fallen and what the return is. But the big news is in. That's why I wanted to get this podcast recorded right away and up as soon as possible. The Mets have traded Justin Verlander. They get a pair of minor league position players who you imagine, again, will slot into their top 10. And the return, because they got Clifford, is better than they got or than they received on the Scherzer deal. And you now move into a new era of Mets baseball. But I will say, before I close here, that the rest of this season is going to be pretty depressing if you're expecting the Mets to go on a run because that rotation is barren now. But you'll have the chance to watch a lot of young players, and you'll be more keyed into Binghamton and Syracuse than ever before. And you hope that 2024, some of that future you just traded for begins to rise to the surface. And we'll all look back at this trade deadline as a time where the Mets took an opportunity to sell in a seller's market and hopefully turn the tides for their franchise for years to come. Anyway, that's going to be all for this bonus breaking news edition of Locked On Mets. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show, Locked On Mets.